Hello, a very good morning to you. It is Tuesday morning. It's Rob Stewart with you for this week's live stream where we're talking about the state of the housing market and what news we've got going on. And a couple of things that I'm going to talk about today and focus on. It's all to do with BuytoLet. So the state of the BuytoLet market. You'll see in the in the thumbnail and the headline. Have we seen or are we seeing the final death throes of BuytoLet, if I call it BuytoLet 1, version 1, what people have been doing for the last 10, 15, 20 years. Is that model now effectively dead, and do we have to look at a different model? I'm going to look at the data, going to dive into the stats, look at objective imperial data so we can make our decision. Before we get to that, I just want to say hello. If everybody could let me know if they can hear me and see me all right, that all the technology is working. Just put a thumbs up if the tech's working and you can hear and see me. And introduce yourself as you come on. If you're through Facebook, you have to click a link that puts your name and profile so I can see who it is. If you're on YouTube, just type in the comments and we can have a chat. I want to make this as engaging as possible. So let's crack on with it without further ado. Before we go into the BuytoLet things, I want to just give a little bit of wider picture things and a little bit of a rant to start with, if I'm honest. I don't like ranting, but a little bit of a rant. I'm now starting to see some of the other influencers in the space talking about a stealth property crash, okay? And I find it slightly interesting because since I've started this channel, and actually even before I started the channel, when I was making some decisions to sell some properties last year, the end of last year, or mid last year, I was talking about the effect of inflation on house prices, okay? And when we're talking about house prices, we need to understand that there's two types of house prices. The nominal house price, which is the actual amount of money that we spend. But then there's the real house price, which is our inflation-adjusted figures. And this is super important because when we look at macroeconomic factors that affect house prices, one of the big things is people's affordability, people's wages, come into that, and that is all affected by inflation as well. So if people's wages are going up, okay, and we've got inflation of wages, which we do right now, even though when we look at inflation adjusted, they're negative, right? That impacts what people can borrow. So to assess affordability and therefore what's going to happen to house prices, we have to understand what's going on in the real house price, so inflation-adjusted house price figures. And only now, right, almost a year from the peak, are some people starting to talk about real house prices and a stealth housing market crash. Look, I've been talking about this since I started this channel, that house prices, we need to have a look at these inflation adjusted. The problem is all the data we get from the ONSs, Rightmove, Halifax, Nationwide, and the ONS, it's all nominal house prices, not inflation adjusted. If we look at the inflation adjusted house prices, okay, we are, or the end of Q1, we are down here. If we draw that along, okay, in a vaguely straight line, we're actually the same inflation-adjusted house prices as we were in 2003, okay? So we have not kept pace with inflation. If you think about, people are talking about house prices, are they going up? Are they going down? Are they steady? We've got Halifax talking about a very slight rise year on year, Nationwide about 2.5% year on year. All of it's vaguely irrelevant if inflation's at over 10%, which it is. Because if house prices are steady, but you're in a hyperinflation is sensationalist. If you're in a high inflationary environment, then real-time house prices are coming down. And if we look at the gradient of that, we're actually similar sort of gradients 2008, which was a black swan event that triggered a big house price dip. So the point is, yes, we are seeing real-time big correction in house prices right now, and we have done over the last sort of 12 months or so. People are now starting to twig this and catch on to it. It's important. Actually, it's very healthy that we're seeing this correction because, we want that gap of affordability to come down, people's real wages versus house prices. We need to see it come down. If it carries on going up, you're going to see that sort of big pop of the bubble and something quite catastrophic happen. We want it to come down, I would say, over the next sort of 6, 12, 18 months. But there we go. That's just my little rant about the industry and their very reactive commentary. Look, we've got to look at what's going on. Sorry, play around with the slides. We've got to look at what's going on. Forward view rather than rear view to be able to anticipate the decisions we make. You know, why do I think it's relevant as a property investor if prices are going down? Well, it's going to affect what I want to offer on things. It's going to affect what I pay for stuff. If I'm looking to develop or sell, I need to understand, you know, what the house prices might be in 12 months' time. I need to understand what the inflationary pressures on things like build costs are going to be. These are all factors that are going to come in to my decision-making process, understanding what's going on in that big picture. So I hope that makes sense. What do you think? Here we got Mitchell. Hello, Mitchell. Lek, very nice to see you. Lek, always great to see the regulars here. I'm going to be starting a lot more community stuff going forward on the channel. So we aim to build the community here of people making decisions based on the right data. So great to see you. Great to see you in. By the way, if you've got any questions as we go through this, put them in, and I'll aim to answer them at the end. So let's talk about the first thing that is going to make BuytoLet just that little bit more difficult for people. Okay, this was put into Parliament, read by Parliament last week. Time goes so quickly. Renters Reform Bill. Okay, this is a big one. I know I've seen a lot of people have commentary on it. I just wanted to dive in and have a look at some of the headlines and how I think that's going to affect BuytoLet going forward. Again, how's it going to affect your decision-making process? This is obviously, let me just zoom out there, something that's been in the pipeline since 2019. It's taken 4 years to get in. It's probably the biggest overhaul of the private rental sector ever, I would suggest, or since the Housing Act in the 80s. So let's go through the highlights and we can have a chat about them. So the first thing, and this is what all the media have been talking about, is Section 21 no-fault evictions to be abolished. Now, look, I just want to go big screen here so we don't have to sit on PowerPoint too long. This is an interesting one. I'm kind of split on this. So I rent my own home at the moment. I'm going to put a video out this week about the pros and cons worth of buying your own home versus renting and investing in cash. I'm in a cycle at the moment where I'm investing, so therefore I release capital and live in rented accommodation. As a renter, I 100% understand and appreciate the stability of not having a landlord just say, oh, well, we're going to turf you out. And actually, as a landlord, I also 100% agree with that there is ethical dilemmas, ethical questions you have to ask as a landlord when you are making a profit out of where people live. And of course, it is not right just to turf people out for no reason. However, it is also your asset. And you want stability, you want certainty of tenancy, but you also want to be able to reclaim your property back if you need to, for a variety of reasons. So what they're doing is getting rid of Section 21, which is a no-fault eviction, which means any landlord, when a tenant is out of their fixed-term tenancy, can serve a Section 21 and reclaim their property back for no reason. There's also a process called accelerated possession, which is using Section 21 for possession only. You can't claim money orders on it. So, for example, if a tenant's in arrears, you can't then go and claim the money back on that. But that accelerates the process because if you're in the industry, you'll know that the court system is pretty clogged up and takes a long time. You've then got Section 8. Section 8 is effectively the other mechanism to reclaim your property, and you'd use that if there were good grounds. So there's about 14 off the top of my head grounds in Section 8, ranging from not paying rent to antisocial behaviour to you live in the property, or you used to live in the property and you want to move back into it. Okay, so there's a whole range. And that's split into two areas. One is called discretionary ground, which means that you can go to court and the court may give you possession, but maybe not. And others are mandatory grounds, which means you go to court and as long as the ground is met, the court will give you possession of your property. For example, if the tenant's not paying the rent. So what they're saying is they're getting rid of Section 21 and they are beefing up a little bit some of the Section 8. So for example, if you've lived in a property or you want to move into the property as a landlord, you'll be able to reclaim through Section 8. But I can, knowing how this works, and as my point of view as a landlord who's been in the industry for over 15 years now, is that the court system and the possession system is not really fit for purpose, and it takes a huge amount of time and money. And in the meantime, if you start going down that process, it can make relations extremely bad with tenants. They can stop paying the rent anyway, depending on what the tenant type is, and it goes into a horrible, stressful situation. So I'm kind of split with this. On the one hand, yes, I think tenants absolutely should not be able to be turfed out for no reason, but also the Section 8 process I don't think is fit for purpose. So I'll be happy with losing Section 21 as long as the Section 8 and the possession process was fit for purpose. I don't think it is, so I think that's going to put landlords off. That's the first thing. What's your views on it? Mitchell's got, in fact, Mitchell, I'll come back to that because I'll go through the rent reform thing and then I'll come back to that question, if that's all right, Mitchell. Okay, let's look at the second thing in the renters reform Periodic tenancies to become standard. Right. This for me, this is a really interesting one. I actually wasn't aware of this. So when somebody takes a tenancy, generally they'll sign up for an AST, a short hold tenancy, for 6 to 12 months. Now this gives certainty of tenancy to the tenant, but it also gives certainty of tenancy to the landlord, right? As a landlord, I want a tenant in my property for as long as possible. I don't want voids. Voids cost money because I've not got rent in, but I'm also going to be paying council tax, potentially a lot of council tax. I'm also going to be paying, sort of bills, utilities, while that property is empty. So it costs money to have voids. I do not want empty properties. What this is saying is that you will no longer need to sign up for a 6 or 12 month ASC, just they're all periodic, which means you come in. I believe, I've not looked too much into detail of this, it's going to be a 2 month rolling. It could be 1 month, but 1 or 2 month rolling. I think this is bad. This is, for me, this is the thing that opened my eyes. Like, as a landlord, I do not like this, especially now we cannot use, or they're getting rid of Section 21, because it's giving all of those rights and flexibility to the tenant, but none of those rights and flexibility to the landlord, i.e. the tenant can pretty much just come in and leave whenever they want. Now, if you're moving a family in, right, and they're putting all the furniture in, you're not just going to want, as a tenant, you're not just going to want to keep moving, but you have the flexibility. So it's almost, I view this as like almost a bit like a try before you buy. You come in, you don't like it, you can go. Right, and when you go, those costs for the landlord are going to go up again. You're going to get voids, reletting, management fees will relet. Every time you put a tenant in, it's going to cost you between half a month and a month's worth of your rent. And if you've got a higher churn of tenants, now I know at the moment there's a lack of supply versus demand, but that might not stay there forever. If you've got a lack of tenants, a churn of tenants, that's going to make it much more expensive for you as a landlord and decrease your returns. So I think it's a really interesting one that I'm not particularly happy about. And I think it's really going to affect things like HMOs. So in an HMO, you can move in with just a suitcase, right? You've got a room in a house of multiple occupation, suitcase, move in. If you don't like it, give you notice and you're off again. So it's going to see a higher churn. I'm also interested how that's going to affect the short-term rental market, especially the sort of contractor-led short-term rental market. Because if you can just come in, you don't have to sign a 6, 12-month tenancy anymore. Will companies that are using things like Airbnb take longer term stays? Will they go down this route, which will be significantly cheaper in the long run than going through Airbnbs and paying that premium? Interesting to see. We're not sure about that. Okay, what's the next one? Notice periods for rent increases to be doubled. I'm not particularly fussed about this. As a landlord, I wouldn't expect to sit there and just keep increasing the rent. I think periods like this, when you're seeing inflation go up, rent will have to go up. That's just obvious. But I believe it's doubling to 2 months and only once a year. I've got no issue with that, guys. Look, we can't just sit there hammering tenants all the time. Here's another one. Ombudsman covering all private landlords. So when I used to own a letting agency, they brought in the letting agency ombudsman scheme. And an ombudsman is basically like a complaint process. It's an independent party that you apply for if you have a complaint. All letting agencies by law have to be registered. But what they're saying here, and I actually kind of get this as being a previous letting. In fact, I totally get this as a previous letting agent. The scheme covers letting agents, but it doesn't cover landlords. So the letting agent can be telling the landlord, let's say a tenant complains to the letting agent about the standard of a property. The letting agent goes to the landlord and the landlord refuses to do anything. That's not the letting agency's issue. That's the landlord who's not taking action. So what they're saying here is all landlords are now going to have to come under a ombudsman scheme. Again, no details on it. What is this going to do? This is just naturally going to make people not want to do it. 100%. They'll go, why should I now? I've got decreasing returns, interest rates are going up, decreasing returns from my property. Section 24, I'm making less money because I'm being taxed on my turnover, not my profits, right? I've now lost all rights to reclaim for, a variety of reasons. Tenants can come and go as they please. And I've now got to probably pay money and be under a registration scheme, which is going to put all my personal details in places, people are just going to not want to do it. I would suggest, and again, in my experience, ombudsman it's a bit of a clunky process, and I'm not completely sure it's fit for purpose. But there we go. We'll see what comes out with that. And then a new property portal for landlords and tenants. Again, I have no idea what the detail is on this, but it's going to be effectively a registration scheme that all landlords are going to have to be on the portal. And if they're not, they're talking about, by the way, they're talking about criminal offences if you do not register. for these schemes. Okay, register on the portal or register for the ombudsman. Criminal. Why is a landlord going to want to do that? Right? Why do they want to come into an industry they're not going to make as much money, and by not getting their compliance right, could be doing criminal acts? I think it's going to aid. It's going to increase the exodus of landlords from the market, particularly in the more elderly baby boomer style landlords. They'll just go, final nail in the coffin. I don't want to be part of this anymore. We're going to be selling. Have I got the right graph here? Yes, I do have the right graph. So there is a lot of chat about this exodus from landlords from the market right now. And here's the data. This is only up to the end of 22. But since 20... Oh, sorry, didn't mean to do that. Since 2015, there has been a net decrease every single year of private rental properties. Now, interestingly, I saw an article by, I think it was Shelter, saying that's absolute rubbish. The number of buy-to-let mortgages is actually going up. So all the landlords who are leaving, we've got more actually coming and buying. I'm not sure I agree with that based on this data. And just because there's more mortgages coming doesn't mean there's more landlords. If we're seeing elderly baby boomer landlords exit the market, they're probably going to be cash. They probably own unencumbered. So I'd imagine a lot of the stock that's being exited have been held for a long time. Sorry, excuse me. And they're being exited right now in cash. So it's not going to show up on that data. So I think that's interesting. So there we go. There's a quick rundown on the rent review or rent reform. There was another one about pets. I'm kind of blur about pets. Other than the fact it's probably going to, again, people are going to go, well, I don't want pets in my rental property because it'll get chewed and furred and all that sort of stuff. So it's just another reason. So I don't see a lot in there that's going to make landlords go, this is awesome, let's dive back into the market. Always think about where's the opportunity. Accelerating the exodus of particular demographics of the landlord community will give opportunity. Rents will likely go up. So everything they're doing will probably have the opposite effect of the intention, which is to make it more expensive to people to rent. Right? I just think that's going to happen. There will be a lot of people selling a lot of stock, maybe happy to do it under creative, especially there's big capital gains tax bills there, creative structures or below market value because they've got so much equity they don't need to sell it at full market value to get rid of portfolio purchases, all of that sort of stuff. We'll talk a bit more about that in a minute. Let's go to the comments and see what we've got. On. Any more comments, by the way? So, can I put that one on? My software will only allow me to put the last comment. I'm sorry about that, Mitchell. I'll just read it out and we'll go to it. So, Mitchell asks, have you looked at the correlation between inflation, interest rates, and house prices? Every time inflation and mortgage rates are high, we generally get downturn. Yeah, 100%, Mitchell. Yeah, I have looked at that actually, and that will probably be a subject of a recorded video. I mean, every one of these cycles has got some different circumstances behind it. And I would say what you just talked about is actually more relevant right now because we've also got the cost of living crisis as well. So when you add that into the mix of affordability, it just is compressing and crunching people's affordability more. People can borrow what they can afford. It's just as simple as that. If people can't, house prices cannot continue to go up if people can't afford to borrow anymore. Now, the contra argument to that is because we've got this wage price spiral at the moment that actually people's wages are going up, and so therefore they can afford to borrow more. And there's the way I see it is we've got quite a lot of pull at the moment, and we're kind of almost at an equilibrium. So we've got that increased cost of borrowing, we've got cost of living, we've got high inflation on the one side, and on the other side we have got very real price wage growth. I say real, let's rephrase that. We've got nominal price wage growth where people's wages are going up at the moment. These two factors are pulling each other, and I think we're somewhere in the middle, and we're kind of waiting to see which way does it go. With the wage price growth, when you actually look at it in real terms, get inflation adjusted, we're actually still negative. So I think just from the top of my head, the last figures I saw was about 6.5% annual nominal, but actually that's about 3-4% drop year on year when you look at it inflation adjusted. So that's interesting. But yes, I 100% agree with you, by the way. What's your thoughts, team, on renters reform bill? Any landlords here at the moment? What's your thoughts on it? In fact, Mitchell, I'll just go to the next slide. which is interest rates versus inflation. So we are kind of talking about that. Look, I've just talked about, that correlation with house prices. Yes, next set of inflation data is out tomorrow. The experts are predicting 2% drop, which would take it to what's still above 8.1%. We'll see what the data is. Here's the interesting thing with inflation. And again, my second rant of the day, second bugbear, is when commentators talk about inflation and say inflation coming down, it's a good thing. Of course it's a good thing, but let's say tomorrow we go down to 8% and people go, yes, it's on its way down, we're out of it. It's still 8%. Right, so inflation coming down does not mean that prices are coming down. It means they're going up at a less quick rate. Okay, so 8% is still 4 times the target. And of course, one of the things that is fueling this inflation now, and I don't know if anybody saw the video I put out last week, when I actually looked at the wholesale cost of utilities, of gas, which is now pretty much what it was in 2019, amazingly. And the companies, I found some good data about forward buying prices per therm, I think it is the thing. Forward buying prices for this winter are the same prices they were about buying gas for 2019, 2020. Okay. Do you think our utility bills are going to go down to 2019, 2020 prices? No. So there we have now this greed inflation that's set in. So all of the companies, right, are going, everybody expects everything to carry on being high, so we're just going to keep it high. And if you go and look at the profits of these massive corporations, go and look at the profits of all the energy companies, Shell, BP, they are posting the biggest profits they've ever had on record, okay? Something wrong here. If there's a linear correlation between the price they charge and the wholesale price, right, everything should be coming down again. But it's not. Prices are going to stay up and their profits are going to go up and up and up. Interesting, right? I'm not going to go into conspiracy theories. I'm not going to go into brown paper bags. But let's face it, do energy companies lobby government? Yes, are government still paying? I know it's probably going to be the energy price guarantee is going to be ending or rehashing soon. But literally, the government is paying a load of the companies this money. Why would they bring it down? Why would they bring the price of energy down when the government's paying for most of it? Look, we'll have to see. I don't have a crystal ball. Banks hoping inflation comes down tomorrow by 2% as the analyst. Let's see what the data shows. If it doesn't come down by that, I think there could be a lot of fallout, to be honest. So we'll see. And if we look at interest rates, okay, or SONIA swap rates, if I just go to, let me find my drawing thing. We want to have a look. This is one I kind of look at most. And I don't know why that's not working. Don't worry about it. I'll just zoom in on the 5-year. So on the 5-year, okay, SONIA swap rate right now, or yesterday. Oh, it's working now. It's the pen's turned off. That's the issue. Sorry about that, Tim. Technology. This is the one I really want to look at. Okay, 5-year SONIA swap rate. This is the figures that the banks will use to be pricing things like the 5-year fixed mortgages. It's at 4.122%. That is the highest I have seen it. I think it's the highest I've ever seen it, actually. So you can see over the last, if I just zoom out on that, 18th of May is 4.05, 19th of April 4.025, so it's been going steadily up. Okay, so the markets are pricing in higher interest rates here, which again is not a great thing for people who are coming off fixed rate mortgages, whether it's your homeowner or your buy-to-let. I had a session yesterday with a client who has £2.5 million worth of lending, all coming off fixed rate over the next 6 months. And it is going to decimate his income and cash flow. That's something we need to look at restructuring. So if anybody's in that position, right, I cannot see interest rates coming down quickly. Inflation sticking, interest rates going to be higher. I think we'll see at least another hike. I don't think my prediction is we'll pause on the next meeting for interest rates. But let's see what the data is tomorrow when it comes out. That's interesting. What's your thoughts? What are your thoughts on interest rates? Okay. Okie dokie. Right. Is BuytoLet dead? So we've talked about renters reform. That's going to kill things off. We've got Section 24. That's killing things off. We have a demonstrable exodus, right? Or exodus, a sensationalist word. We have a demonstrable gap between sales and purchases, right? People are selling more, or more buy-to-lets are being sold than bought. Again, I've not seen the data for 2023, but I can't believe that's necessarily going to be stopping. Although saying that, if you're like me, be waiting on the sidelines a little bit, ready to pile in over the next 12 months when there'll be some great opportunities. But this is the big one. This is the one I wanted to share with you that I think is pretty eye-opening. This is the UK Finance report on arrears and possessions in the mortgage market. I'm just going to zoom in on this so we can look at individual bits. We've now got the data for Q1 2023. The last one I talked about was obviously Q4 2022. That's been quite a while now until we've got this one. I want to start with number of homeowner mortgages with arrears. Okay. Oh, damn, sorry. I need to do two fingers. So we're looking at this one up here. If we can look at this, this is homeowners. Nothing too catastrophic with the homeowners. Okay. So just to zoom out a little bit so you can see it. We're looking at this stuff here. Okay. This data starts when you hit 2.5% arrears on a mortgage. Now, if you just take out a new mortgage, 25%, a 25-year mortgage, 2.5% represents about 5.5 months of missed payments. So this data we're looking at has got a huge lag in it. Okay, so we're looking at Q1 2023, which some of this stuff could have dropped in at 1st of January. So therefore, the first mortgage payment could have been missed in August 2022, right? So we're looking back potentially almost 9 months for some of this data. We can see the arrears, the first bracket, which is 2.5 to 5%, year-on-year comparison for homeowners up 11%. Okay, up 11%. We can also see that they've dropped on the other ones, which is 5 to 7.5%, 7.5 to 10% of balance. Now, why would they be dropping? Well, number one, they could be repossessed. So the bank could be repossessed, therefore the data's going to fall off. Number two, the owner could have sold them. So the more in arrears you get, the more desperate you're going to get to sell. So this is the one I'm looking at. Who's falling into this first bracket, 2.5 to 5% of the balance, 11% year on year. Now, we have to take this with a slight pinch of salt, okay, because it's all about the trends. So if we go and have a look at the trends here, you can see since this is a 3-year trend, we've been down for about 2 years, and now we're starting the trend up. Okay, this is the light green line at the top. It's interesting looking at this because obviously Q1 2020 was when COVID hit. When COVID hit, everybody got a massive amnesty on arrears, repossessions. It all stopped. It all closed down. Okay. You can see the trend has reversed. I believe the trend has reversed, and we've now got a year worth of rising. We're still way below pre-pandemic levels. Okay, so it's not like, oh, it's Armageddon. It's not like it's 2008, everyone gets repossessed, but we're keeping an eye on the trend. I believe that is significant. However, I want to talk about BuytoLet. So this next one down here, okay, is BuytoLet mortgages within the arrear bands. And if we go over here, right, this is the one that I'm really looking at. Quarter on quarter, 33% increase. I'm not fussed. The Q4 2022 was a bit of an anomaly. It was a bit low. It's this one here, year-on-year comparison, 44% up year-on-year. BuytoLet mortgages that have ticked into the 2.5 to 5% of balance. That to me is extremely statistically significant. You can see with the others actually we've got 7% in the 5 to 7.5. This is year on. This is not the amount of mortgages in it, right? This is the percentage increase. 7%, 10%, 7.5 to 10% balance, and then arrears over 10% balance -1. Again, I would imagine people are selling or getting repossessed when they're in that sort of thing. But this is big. Okay, this is a large increase, and if we look at the graph, okay. Again, statistically, we are now here. We are higher than pre-pandemic levels for buy-to-lets in arrears. Remember, this could be 6 to 9 months out of date, this data. So this is potentially when interest rates are still at 3%, 2.5 to 3% last summer. Some of these people are starting to get into, or not get into arrears, start missing their first payments. So we're going to be watching that very closely. But it feels, it feels like there's a lot of landlords in trouble with the standard buy-to-let model. Okay, a lot of landlords in trouble. I just realised I haven't turned my power on. Let me just turn the power on there. What do you think about that? What's your thoughts, and how is this going to affect buy-to-let? Because I think the model is changing, and I'm just going to, if I just go in here, right, and we just have a quick look at the standard buy-to-let model, because what people used to do with buy-to-let is they'd go and buy, you go and buy your 200k flat in a block of flats or something. You do it with a, let's just say, 150k mortgage, and you'd have a 50k deposit, And then, you know, the flat would rent out at, I don't know, say £1,000 a month, right? And if we've got 150k mortgage, let me just get my phone and work out that if we're on, I don't know, let's say 2.5% interest rate. I'm just going to go super easy here. 150 divided by 12. Okay, that's 312 a month in interest. Look, we're going to have 10% voids, 10% maintenance, 10% management fee. So I'd always take off 100 for management, you know, 100 for voids and arrears, which leaves us with, what's that? It's about £500 a month, just under £500 a month. Okay, fine. That's what people used to do. Works fine. You get some money out of it. Now, if interest rates have doubled, let's say they're at 5%, 150 grand times 0.05 divided by 12. I mean, it's going to be double, isn't it? So we're now at, let's do this, 625. So that £1,000 a month minus 625 minus your 200, right? We're at, still got that. We're literally at 175. 175 a month. Huge drop. And don't forget, we've now got Section 24. So if we are a higher rate taxpayer, okay, we are going to be taxed on, so pre-Section 24, okay, we're going to get taxed on that figure. Post Section 24 is going to be the 1,000 minus that. So let's just say that's 800. We're going to be taxed on the 800. That 625 interest is not tax offsettable anymore. There is a 20% amount you can do on that if you're a high rate taxpayer, but you're going to be taxed on pretty much the 800. So you're making 175 a month, but you're being taxed on 800. You're not going to be making any money. BuytoLet version 1, in my eyes, is dead. Okay, this model just doesn't work anymore. Now it might change again in the future, but right now, with interest rates going up, with Section 24, it does not work. So what is the solution? There's always solutions. There's always other opportunities. In my portfolio, I look at, and if you watch any of my videos, if you haven't watched any of my other videos, by the way, where I give sort of case studies, go and have a look at them. I'll link to some. I'll put an end screen on after this so you can go and have a look at a playlist of them. Look at the higher density, higher yielding property types, mixed use, commercial, flats, short-term lets, all of these things where we've got much more flexibility to have tax incentives, to use the tax incentives that are out there. So the old tax incentives are gone, okay? New tax incentives, capital gains, you know, buildings and structures allowance, short, you know, furnished holiday lets. There's lots of tax incentives out there if you know how to structure things correctly. And if you have higher density units, we can add more value. And now we're seeing people exodus. There's more value we can add, right? This is where the opportunity is. This is BuytoLet 2.0. Old model is gone. New model, huge opportunity. That's my view. What's your view? I'd love to get your thoughts on it, guys. I'd love to see what's Lex saying. Lex saying it looks like interest rates will go up again. Don't get me wrong. Whatever you're doing, interest rates going up is a tough thing. You know, we're buying one at the moment. We're going to add value, refinance, but I know we're going to refinance. It's going to be twice the interest rate that I've been, you know, have stuff on at the moment. I've got it fixed. I've got some things on variable rate. I've got one mortgage that's gone up from $1,300 a month to $1,950 a month right now. Luckily, the income from that property is about $3,500 a month. So there's a big fudge factor there, but it's still eating into those profits. There you go, team. That's where we are. State of the market, especially BuytoLet right now. Things are changing. Things are changing quickly. When I got started 15 years ago, it was all boring. And it's not like every week we had new things to talk about. Right now, literally every week we've got new things to talk about with what's going on. With all the changes, legislation changes, you know, tax changes, fight against landlords on every aspect, inflation, all this sort of stuff. It's great fun. What's your thoughts? Let me know. And if you've got any other questions you'd like to ask, now's your time to do it. I'm happy to hang around for a few minutes and answer any questions you might have on anything property related. Over to you guys. I'll give it a minute or so before I wrap up, as I've got my property cashflow accelerator coaching call in the not too distant future. So I'll have to prepare for that. Oh, what I'll also do, by the way, is I'll put it in a comment after this. I have put together a totally free sort of introductory course on property investing. It's called Property Cashflow Kickstarter. No obligation. completely free. It's not like you have to sign up for 2 weeks and then start paying. It's just a completely free course. I'll put a link up to it if you want to get an exposure to the sort of mechanisms that I use in my business and what's out there at the moment. And I'll probably update that with some of the things that's going on in the market right now, because it's I've had it out there for a while now. Any question? But I'll put that in a pinned comment in the links. So if you want to get involved in that, have fun with it. Let me know, team. Any queries? Any questions? If that was valuable, can you give me a quick thumbs up? It always helps get out to people who want to see videos like this. YouTube likes thumbs up. I like thumbs up. If you're new to the channel, if you haven't seen anything before, please go and have a look at the other videos. I'd love it if you would subscribe. I am on a route or the road to 1,000 subscribers. I know it's tiny, small fry. I've only been going for a few months, and I'm looking forward to hitting that milestone. So help me out to do that if you think it's valuable content. But otherwise, team, I'll sign off, and I'll probably see you next week. We'll talk about the inflation data that comes out tomorrow, and let's see what's going to go on with that and what fallout we see from that. Have a great end to the week. Weather's looking lovely. Enjoy it. Don't work too hard, and I'll see you next week.